this is kind of hard to say. If the big corporation Pepsi set the prices for their pop, and a little tiny organization that was run by Baumstark called Cody Cola, and he had to sell his cola at 50 cents a can to make a profit, but Pepsi had such a monopoly and such a big business that they could sell their cans for 25 cents. How well does he do? Bad. And what happened is these small businessmen began to complain to the federal government that these big corporations were forming trusts and they were setting the prices so low it ran them out of business. So Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which outlawed trusts or other monopolies that would hinder trade in the United States. So they didn't let these big businesses set the prices anymore. They had to be competitive. Okay? So there are some laws that state what people can ask for their product. You can't ask such a low price and even be willing to lose money for a year because you're such a big corporation to run the other corporations out. Now I heard a rumor about this, and I don't know if it's true, and it's not exactly what we're talking about, but it's kind of an example. The rumor I heard is over in Shoshone, you know, that gas station that just, I mean, it's got to be a gold mine. My God, everybody stops there if they're going to Casper, going to Riverton. I heard the guy bought that one, and he bought the one across the street and shut down the one across the street so that everybody would come to this one. That's kind of what I'm talking about in a way. Now, I'm sure the guy that sold it to him across the street, he probably paid him pretty good money for it. But what didn't he want? Competition. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's true, but there's nobody at the other gas station. Next time you go through there, there's a pretty nice gas station across the street that is not open. Okay? Is that my right? Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah, but I think it used to be open until he bought it and shut it down. So, yeah, that's what he did. So anyway, that's the Sherman Antitrust Act. Okay. The second one I thought was very important. It was called the Dependent Pension Bill. Now you think about, we had a Little Bighorn lecture. And we talked about some of those personalities of the Little Bighorn. And what I tell you about Donald McIntosh's wife, what did she get for the rest of her life? $30 a month pension. Well, what does it say? Dependent Pension Bill did under Harrison is it allowed for Civil War veterans and veterans to get better pensions because of their service in the military. Okay? So, the Dependent Pension Bill broadened the pension qualifications for those Civil War veterans and veterans of the Frontier War who could not perform manual labor and hold a job. Okay? That's what it did. That's a good thing. Okay? Taking care of our veterans. Well, Harrison's going to run for election in 1892. But he's going to lose. And I'll talk about that later. And it was a tough loss for him because not only did he lose the election of 1892, he lost his wife who died 2 weeks before election day. So he had a really tough time. So he ran for re-election in 1892, was defeated. Very tough loss for President Harrison because his wife had died just 2 weeks before election day. No.
It's still the same one.
No. Well, after the presidency, what do you think Harrison did? Think about his profession. What did he do? Yeah, he went back to Indianapolis, Indiana to practice law. So he actually one of few presidents that went out and got a job after he was president. He went back to Indiana to practice law. And he was lonely, and so what did he do in 1896? He remarried. Very good. He remarried Mary Lord Dimmick. Now, I don't want you to think this is weird, because kids think this kind of thing is weird. Mary Lord Dimmick was a lady that cared for his wife during the time she was ill. And he appreciated that. And so when his wife died, he didn't have anything going on beforehand. When his wife died a few years later, he reunited with this lady and married her. And that happens often. I'm going to tell you a story about a friend of mine in Laurel. God, Bob Oren. the bachelor of the century, okay? This guy never got married, and he was like 45 years old. There was nothing wrong with him if you're thinking that. He just didn't want to be married. A good friend of his got cancer and was dying. And they were best friends, and Bob spent hours with his friend and hours with his friend, was good friends with the wife. Bob Orrin, who had no intention of probably ever marrying, sat down with his friend, this is a true story, on his dying day, and he said, "You got to promise me you'll take care of my wife. I want you to marry my wife. I want you to have a relationship with her and get to love her, but if you can at all possibly do," and he really liked this guy's wife. I mean, he was friends with him. So when the guy died, they dated, they dated, took a liking for each other, and he married his best friend's wife at his request. Well, not an unusual thing. I mean, with the way society goes today, you always think of the worst, you know what I mean? But this is what he did. He remarried Mary Lord Dimmick, and a lady who cared for his wife during her illness. And they had their own daughter together as well. Well, in 1887, Harrison decided that he wanted to write a book. And he wrote the book, and it was called This Country of Ours. And it was basically a book about the federal government. And here is a first edition, first printing of This Country of Ours. So I'll pass around, you can kind of take a look at it. Be careful with it if you would, please. But you can look at it. Okay? So he began to write, and in 1897 he wrote a book about the federal government entitled This Country of Ours. He eventually died on March 13th, 1901, at his home at the age of 68, and was buried in Indianapolis. So Benjamin Harris eventually died on March 13th, 1901. He died at his home at the age of 68, and was eventually buried in Indianapolis. Now I'm going to give you 4 interesting facts about Benjamin Harrison, one that ties pretty close to you guys. Okay? Out of room? Get some more paper. Are you out of paper?
No, I was saving it for the
okay.
next topic.
Here's one important thing about Benjamin Harrison. He was the first president ever elected that was from the state of Indiana. Now, he wasn't born there, but that's where he moved to and lived, so he was considered from Indiana. So he's our first president from Indiana. Another little tidbit, it was during Harrison's administration that free rural mail delivery started. What is rural mail delivery? Delivering mail in the rural areas, in the country. Where, you know, you'd have people come out, people live in rural areas, you know, everybody gets their mail delivered in town, or you go to the post office box. It was during his administration they started free rural mail delivery. They were delivering mail rurally before that, but they were charging people. It became free at that point. President Harrison's administration also became the first that reached a peacetime billion-dollar budget. Okay, what's a budget? How much it costs to run the country, right? And what's the difference between a peacetime budget and a wartime budget? Your wartime budget is going to be way higher. For example, the Vietnam War, at the latter stages of the Vietnam War, it was costing the United States of America $1 million per day to fight the Vietnam War. That's a wartime budget, it's much more. But we had a first billion-dollar peacetime budget. In other words, the budget to run our country during his administration, during peacetime, was $1 billion. That's what it was. I'd hate to guess what it is now. Now, ironically for you, the state of Wyoming came into the Union during Harrison's term as president. The state of Wyoming came into the Union during Harrison's term as president. So, there's your tidbit of the day, that it was during Benjamin Harrison's presidency that this state became, or this territory became a state. All right, we'll cover another election. We're talking about politics. And we're going to get into a little war with Spain. So the election of 1892, and I already told you that Harrison ran, right? So he's obviously going to be the Republican Party nominee for president, right? If he ran and lost. Anyone want to guess who the Democratic Party candidate is going to be? No? No? Grover Cleveland. Okay, Grover Cleveland, who was defeated in his re-election attempt. He's going to run for the Democratic Party. Former President Grover Cleveland. Doesn't happen very often that a former president runs for president again unless they're running for re-election or their own term after they succeed a president after an assassination or whatever. So he took 4 years off and he's going to run again. Okay? Well, we had a third political party that jumped into the election of 1892, and it was called the Populist Party. And they chose a guy by the name of James B. Weaver to run for president. And the Populist Party was made up exclusively of farmers. So farmers got together and put together their own political party called the Populist Party, and they nominated James B. Weaver. So you're going to have President Benjamin Harrison running for re-election on the Republican Party ticket. You're going to have former President Grover Cleveland running in the Democratic Party, and then the farmers put together a party called the Populist Party, and they nominate James B. Weaver. Well, the Democrats win this election easily, and Cleveland is re-elected, kind of, right? He earns 277 electoral votes to Harrison's 145. 277 to 145. That's a pretty large margin, is it not? And because of this, Grover Cleveland becomes the first and only former president to be elected president of the United States non-consecutively. So look at this. You've got Arthur, Cleveland, Harrison, Cleveland. Okay, a little bit older looking, but Cleveland, Harrison, Cleveland. First time and only time in history. Now, fortunately for Cleveland, who won control of Congress? The Democrats. Okay? Always makes it easier if your Congress is controlled by the presidential party. Now, the Populist Party actually did pretty well. Very seldom when you have a third party come in do they win any electoral votes. The Populist Party actually won 22 electoral votes in this election, and over 1 million people voted for James B. Weaver. Over 1 million people voted for him. So there was some support among the farmers. And naturally, who voted for him? The farmers. Okay? Well, Cleveland didn't have a overly impressive second term non-consecutively, so we're not going to talk too much about that for the sake of time. And the last thing we'll talk about today is a short topic called the election of 1896. And we'll move out of elections for a bit and move into trouble in Cuba, which is going to lead us to what? War with Spain. Okay? So the election of 1896. Now, we're going to have a whole new breed of candidates here. Everybody that was running before is kind of out of it. So the Republican Party chose William McKinley as their candidate for the presidency. William McKinley. He also is from Ohio. We've had a lot of presidents from Ohio, have we not? So McKinley was from Ohio also, and he had served in both the House of Representatives and as governor of Ohio. So he was an Ohio guy. He served in the House there. He served as governor there. So he obviously had some political experience and was very familiar with the state. Now McKinley picked an interesting fellow for his vice presidential candidate, Garrett Hobart of New Jersey. Garrett Hobart. And the thing that was interesting about Garrett Hobart of New Jersey is he had no political experience at all. He had never been elected to any office in his life prior to becoming the nominee for vice president. Never had any political experience whatsoever. An interesting choice. The Democrats picked a congressman from Nebraska by the name of William Jennings Bryan to run on their party ticket for president. Congressman William Jennings Bryan from Nebraska. Congressman means you're serving in the House, yep, because you'd be a senator otherwise. So the Democrats selected Congressman William Jennings Bryan from Nebraska as their nominee. He was only 36 years old at the time of his nomination. 36. And Bryan chose Arthur Sewell of Maine as his running mate. William Jennings Bryan picked Arthur Sewell of Maine. Populist Party hadn't given up though. They're going to have a candidate in this election too. And they also nominated William Jennings Bryan. Can you believe that? So he was nominated by two different parties in this election. You'd think that'd give him a better chance to win, wouldn't you? You'd think so. The Populist Party nominated Bryan for president. But they didn't take the Democratic vice presidential candidate. They went with a guy by the name of Tom Watson of Georgia. And the reason they did that is because he was very close. He was a farmer, he was close to the party, and they wanted an identity for the party. So in this election, which is kind of weird, you've got William McKinley running for president. You've got, for the Republicans, you've got William Jennings Bryan running for the Democrats. And you've got William Jennings Bryan running for the Populist Party. Okay? Well, when the smoke cleared, McKinley collected 271 electoral votes compared to that of 176 for Bryan to become the nation's 25th president. Nation's 25th president. So when the smoke clears, McKinley collects 271 electoral votes, Bryan has 176, and McKinley becomes the 25th president. Now let's count some up here a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Did I miss? Well, let's try that again. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 20. So is that right? Yes. Is he the 25th president?
Yes.
He's the 24th.
He's the 24th. What's that? He's the 24th president because
Grover ran
he
20.
went twice.
What is that?
Does that make sense? 24, 25, 26, 27,
It's the
28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43. Is Barack Obama the 43rd president?
Yes.
What is he? He's 44th. So did they count him twice? They did. So I just want to clear it up. He was the 25th president. But interesting. Okay? Now, you'll have no more Populist Party after this. That was the end of the Populist Party. Now, let me just kind of set us up for tomorrow. You can go ahead and put the trouble in Cuba. And I just want you to understand a couple things before we start. Spain actually had control of two little countries in Cuba, or two little countries in the Caribbean. Cuba and what? Puerto Rico. And that's going to be the issue. And this is going to be ironic, kids. Listen, because are we very good friends with Cuba today? No. But we are getting into this conflict to support Cuba. And we'll talk about that. Yeah. Okay? Trouble in Cuba.
He was nominated 4